It's Baxy's Musical Podcast.
Welcome back to Baxy's Musical Podcast. You know, admittedly, preparing for some of the interviews on this podcast over the last couple of years has been somewhat of a daunting task. Write a book? That's no problem. I can read your book, I can prepare a bunch of questions, and I'll be ready to go. But if you're in a band that's released over 40 studio albums over the course of 35 years, like the band Guided by Voices, then you have to wonder, where the hell am I supposed to begin with this? Even if you already own a couple of their albums, and I do, I still have a mountain of additional material to sift through before I could even pick up the phone. Now, that's not a complaint by any means, because over the years, I've been lucky to dive into music by prolific artists like The Fall and R. Stevie Moore, the Melvins and Sparks. The deeper the pool, the more I want to dive in and swim around for a bit. And the band Guided by Voices is one of those bands. I've owned some of their albums for years, records like 1994's B-Thousands or Alien Lanes from 1995 or Under the Bushes, Under the Stars from 1996. I've got those already. And I've got a couple others too, but there are still 35 other albums left to go, and I'm not even talking about the EPs or the compilations or the live album or the 6 different box sets or any of the dozens of solo albums that are out there too. Most of the songs written for these albums were all created by one guiding creative voice, Robert Pollard, a profoundly endless well of creative ideas. He's a guy who's written somewhere between 1,500 and 3,000 songs. He's just an insanely talented, prolific guy, and his band Guided by Voices are certifiable indie rock legends. But like any creative talent, sometimes you have to rely on the skill and creativity of others to bring that creative vision into view. And even Robert Pollard has to rely on guys like my guest today, longtime guitarist Doug Gillard. Doug has not only played with Guided by Voices for the last 26 years, he's also released 9 albums as the lead guitar player for his other band, Not a Surf, over the last 31 years. He's got solo records and many, many other projects under his belt. What I can tell you about the music of Guided by Voices is that it's absolutely glorious, and there's a hell of a lot of it. And with each album becoming a new discovery of hidden gems, they are amazing. And for the second time this year, Guided by Voices is releasing another album, this one entitled Tremblers and Goggles by Rank. And like so many other Guided by Voices albums, it's pretty damn awesome too. But Guided by Voices are more than just a band that's released a string of great records. They've also built a well-deserved reputation as a tremendous live band as well. And I mention this because Guided by Voices is getting ready to go back on the road later this month, starting at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio, and then later at Race Street Live in Holyoke, Massachusetts on September 23rd. Since 1996, Doug Gillard has been the lead guitar player for Guided by Voices, and after sifting through his expansive body of work and genuinely enjoying every moment of it, I'm thrilled to be speaking with Doug Gillard from Guided by Voices on Baxy's Musical Podcast. I'm sorry for the mix-up yesterday between computer problems and the fact I can't read a calendar at the age of 55. I'm off to a winning start here today. So
well, that's all right.
So how are you?
Sure.
You must be absolutely exhausted. I can barely follow my own calendar, but following yours, it's like you haven't taken a break with Not a Surf. You're coming to Massachusetts. You've got records promoting. So
No. The priority's Guided by Voices, and but we have done some dates recently. Always have records coming out, so
well,
you're not too far off.
Again, I can't read your calendar either.
That's okay.
So but even still, there's a lot going on with you right now, and to come up with 2 albums in the course of just 7 months in a year has got to be really exhausting.
We've kind of inched up to this pace over the last 5 years. Usually there's at least 2 a year, but in the pandemic years, we kind of ramped it up to 3. And occasionally we'll devote a year just to one album. Space Gun came out in 1 year, and that was the only album we focused on that year.
So when Bob tells you, hey, I want to record another album, do you just say, hey, didn't we just finish that? I mean, I know you're used to the pace, but from from the outsider looking in, it sounds like it's a pretty intense effort to be a part of Guided by Voices.
Well, he gives us the demos for a new batch of demos when, we're still working on a couple records before that one. Well, one or two. We always have something in the can, So, and he allows us time to get it together and peruse the demos and think of how we're going to do them. And eventually he comes up with some production notes as well. And so we've kind of been on this pace for a while, and it's something we're used to. It's a system that works for us. We record in all sorts of different ways. Sometimes we're together. Sometimes we do parts remotely. Travis Harrison glues it all together in an amazing way as the producer.
I've been listening to the new record for the last couple of days, Tremblers and Goggles by Rank. I really like the record. I mean, I've had other albums by you guys, for years. But this, to me, this is a really great record. Some of the songs I think are awesome. I love Unproductive Funk. Alex Bell is awesome. The one I was just listening to, really a lot today was Focus on the Flock. I mean, the time the time changes in that song are bananas. That's a really cool song. Yeah,
it's some people want to throw the prog label on some of these multi-part songs, but and Guided by Voices we do our share of prog elements every record, I think. But some of these are more like just sort of mini symphonies or mini operettas or rock operas maybe. It's not so much progressive rock in there. Just because there's some different time signatures, there's not, you don't have the classic sort of Keith Emerson synth thing going on or whatever.
Well, I think that's kind of the great thing about Guided by Voices is it's not a band that you could ever easily categorize. You couldn't say it's one thing or another. And I think for someone who is listening to this band, whether it's like an old fan or even for the very first time, I think that's what makes these albums so interesting, is that every song is something a little bit different and a little quirky at the same time. I think you're right. There are elements of prog in it, but there's so many other elements in every single album you guys have ever done. It's one of the great parts about Guided by Voices. Well,
ever since I've known Bob, he's always said Guided by Voices, pretty much every record encompasses the 4 Ps. The 4 Ps are prog, psychedelic, punk, and pop. I mean, not in that order at all. I would say maybe 5 Ps, because there's post-punk in there a lot, too.
True. When you've got a catalog that's this large, and you're talking about 40-some-odd albums, or, whatever the number, may be at this point, for a lot of bands that record that frequently and have that much music, I got to believe there's a slight temptation to either repeat what you have done or at least follow a formula. And by illustrating what you're talking about with these 4 or 5 Ps, you can't just fall into a formula. I mean, obviously, this is a very conscious decision on your part to not repeat what you've done for 39 previous records.
Yeah, that's true. Well, every one of us, when we record our parts remotely, or even if we're all together in the same studio, we strive to kind of find new ways to do things, record things. Sometimes even if you can't tell on the record that it's something crazy that we did, but found sounds, some of us will record some things we heard out in the wild and on our phones and stick that in the record. Kevin will record some drums at home individually to make one part, you know what I mean? Just striving to be a little bit innovative where we can. Sometimes Travis will throw things on a 4-track and then send it back to the Pro Tools or a 2-inch tape that we have. This last one, just for example, a few months ago, I was at my local laundromat and was getting stuff out of the washer, and it has this aluminum drum there.
Right.
And I was turning it around to make sure nothing was sticking on it after I got everything out, and squeaked. I said, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Squeak, and it has a natural reverb to it. So I stuck the phone in there and recorded some of that. That ended up on the end of Who Wants to Go Hunting. It sounds kind of scary.
There's always been this Wi-Fi aesthetic with you guys. Sometimes you employ it, sometimes you really don't. It's kind of cool to hear you talk about that that anything that you hear or that inspires you or just catches your attention can be turned into something pretty remarkable. I applaud people who do that, because to me there's literally no restriction on what art can be if you're gonna do it that way. I think that's a really important thing for artists to understand, that everything is up for grabs.
Yeah, and it's also something that, I mean, that didn't originate with this lineup. Bob and those guys were doing that since day one during the Propeller days, and that wasn't day one, but that's kind of where they started getting a little more experimental. And I mean, it was Bob's idea to have a bunch of people chanting GBV, and by a bunch of people, that was the band members in the studio, just layering tracks and making it sound like a crowd. And that started off one of those old records. And just different ideas we've done through the years. It's always been a part of it.
You mentioned during the pandemic. I mean, you guys released 7 albums over the course of those years with the shutdowns and everything, which is impressive. But typically speaking, what is the process? I mean, you said that Bob brings ideas and production notes, but when it comes to you guys, when you get a chance to hear these demos and work on them, do you find that the way he does it makes it easy for you, or is it more challenging for you as a guitar player or anybody else in the band? I mean, are these songs, in your view, kind of like ready-made creations, or is there enough room for you guys to be influenced this too?
Very much the latter. This may sound a little cliche, but I look at it as a canvas. It's not a blank canvas, but at all. I have a lot of freedom to make up multiple parts every song, and that's what happens. But there's lots of different guitar textures on each song, usually it depends on the tune. And I'll get different tones and can sound like 2 or 3 different people. And then throw some leads on there, licks or not, or some keyboards or whatever. And the other members do some things like that too. Travis will come up with some atmospheric ideas sometimes, or ways to produce things. And we do that, and we also try to stay within if there are guidelines. Sometimes per song there are very few notes, production notes. Sometimes they're very intricate. So according to Bob has a vision for this song, that song, but he trusts our instincts, and we all feel a fair amount of freedom when we create this music.
I think when you have a guy who writes as many songs as Bob has, and he's done it for forever now. I think it says a lot about how much he respects and trusts you guys as musicians and individuals to allow you to do that. There are a lot of songwriters that are very proprietary when it comes to their songs, and they really don't want you to influence too much. Like they've got it in their head, and what they hear in their head is exactly what they want, either on tape or recorded. Tell me a little bit about working with a guy who is that prolific.
There are other songwriters like that. I probably would be one of them. When I do solo things, I tend to play all the stuff myself and all that kind of thing, because I don't really want to tell other people what to play. But then again, I know what should go there, and that's a little bit myopic or something. So it is nice that he has that sort of trust to let us just kind of, I don't want to say play what we want, but it really is all about what the songwriter envisions. So sometimes the more notes that we get, the better. So we know we're on the right track. Sometimes we just kind of will do something and present it, and it's something he's really happy with. So
and like you said, he's pretty receptive to that. So that's pretty remarkable. There's a lot of guys who would be afraid or too protective to do that.
Yeah.
What about lyrically? Have you ever had influence in the lyrics of these songs? For a lot of fans, they could hear the lyrics. You may not know exactly what Bob is trying to say, and maybe Bob knows what he's trying to say. Is he also open to lyrical ideas too?
No, not really. And that's something that is completely his domain in his band, which is great. And that includes, background vocal ideas and everything. He usually has it all. He definitely knows what he wants to do before he goes in to sing. Sometimes he'll have spontaneous ideas on the day that he's doing the vocals too, and we'll add a harmony if he's hearing it. But he definitely usually has the vocals mapped out, and just kind of wants to have that as his domain, because he's really great at the lyrics and titles. It's kind of something he really prides himself on and is really works at every day.
That's actually kind of the fun Guided by Voices records is just reading the titles of the song. It almost doesn't matter what the song actually is. Sometimes that's almost as entertaining as anything else.
That's true. The inspiration and word combinations are pretty stunning.
You joined the band in the mid 90s or so. It was like 96, 97 or so. when you were working with another band, Cobra Verde. Tell me about how you got involved with Guided by Voices.
I had a couple solo things out. This is really early 90s, on a compilation by Scat Records. And I was over at Robert Griffin's apartment one time, helping to stuff some records, as for some other artists on that compilation. And he put on this record, and this is about 92 or so. And I piped up and said, "Wow, this is pretty cool. What is this?" He goes, "This is this band from Dayton I might sign. They're called Guided by Voices." I said, "Wow, it's really good." It's one of the Vanity records they had already released, like Sandbox, or one of those late 80s, early 90s records. And so by the next year, he had signed them and brought them. I was playing with this local guy in Cleveland at the time. It wasn't my main band, but I was playing with this guy. And Griffin brought the band to see us play, and then there was a party afterwards. And I was talking to Bob, and it turns out he liked my early band, Death of Samantha, which became Cobra Verde. He also knew John Pekovic from Cobra Verde as well, from Death of Samantha, around that same time. And so Cobra Verde ended up opening up for Guided by Voices the first time they came to Cleveland to play. And then the next year, my band Gem also had an opening spot with them. And so, we're all friends. By late 96, Bob had dissolved that lineup, and then on further reflection wanted to get a band going again, and so he just called us in Cobra Verde to ask if we wanted to do a record and be the band. We said yes.
So was that Mag Earwig?
Yeah.
That was the one.
Yep, that was Mag Earwig.
And at what point does he say, "Hey, why don't you join permanently?"
Pretty much then. I think we figured out we had an album, and Matador wanted to put it out. And
over the years, Guided by Voices has broken up a number of times and reformed, and Bob said he didn't want to perform live again. But in 2016, everything kind of got back on track. Tell me what happened and why you decided to come back. I mean, I know you had done things with him on your time away from the band, but what made you decide to start playing with him again?
They needed a guitar player, and so they asked me. I went,
as simple as that.
I mean, they found themselves in need of someone to finish out one tour date. So I played that show, and it went very well. And so, the chemistry was there still, and so we just all figured it'd be a great idea if I rejoined.
I was listening to some of your solo records, Parade On and Salamander. I listened to them on Spotify the other day, and they're both really good records. And I hear them, and I'm wondering, with all the stuff that you have going on with the other projects, do you ever think about doing another solo record, or is that not really in the cards right now?
Yeah, I've been working on stuff, and during the pandemic, there were 2 or 3 solo songs released on little benefit compilations, Spotify-only benefit compilations, and for some of the causes that were going on then. So, and there's a few more that are done. I need to kind of fill it out a little more, but is something I have been working on. So yeah, for sure, there'll be something at some point.
But
there's a record in between those 2 albums you named, too, that's out. It's just not on Spotify. It's called Call from Restricted. That was out around 2009, but I think Bandcamp might have that on.
I only was able to listen to ones on Spotify. It's like, believe it or not, there was enough to listen to over the last 7 days to get ready for this. Couldn't possibly get to everything. To go back to the catalog here for a second, because I find this really interesting, because there's a sweet spot in Guided by Voices which most people will cite. B-1000, Alien Lanes, and Under the Bushes, Under the Stars, as being kind of like the and even Mag Earwig, for that matter, kind of being like the sweet spot for the band. But there's so much other stuff. It's one of the kind of intimidating parts of that catalog. In a way, it's kind of like intimidating, like trying to get into the Fall or a band like Sparks.
Exactly.
There's just so much stuff. In your view, when you're learning bits and pieces of this catalog to prepare for either a tour or whatever it may be, where do you suggest people dive right in? I mean, I'm sure there's no one entry point for everybody, but apart from those 4 records, what of Guided by Voices do you appreciate the most?
Well, that's a question I think about all the time, because I get asked that all the time, where to start or what to tell somebody. And I really don't know. I say jump in anywhere and then go back. Yeah, they're also different, too. Different studios, different eras, different lineups. The EPs are great that they did around that time, around the time of between B1000 and Under the Bushes. And those are actually coming out pretty soon.
Oh, really?
As their own album. Yeah, Bob's compiling those, the best of the EPs. Not the best of the EPs, just the entire EPs. Like there's Half Japanese Spin Cycle, Clown Prince of the Menthol Trailer. All those things are in 94, 95, 96. Some of them were CD singles, some of them were just EPs on their own labels too. And that's just one era. So there's even more, as you said. So probably 2004 or something, Matador released a box set compilation that was sort of a best of up until then. That's a good place to dive in, even though that's still a 2 CD or 4 CD box set in itself, and then look at everything that's come out since then. So,
a while back, I interviewed Russell Mael from Sparks. It's a band with 25 albums, and a few years ago, they did. I don't know. Maybe you know this. They did like 22 albums in 22 days, where they played live all their albums in their entirety, one day after the next. And I asked him, would he ever do that again? And he said, I would not suggest that. I would imagine that would never, ever happen with Guided by Voices.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think you'd want to.
It's a fun idea. But Bob is usually all about promoting the current album we have out at the time,
but which
is great.
But the set list that you guys have been that I've seen over the last few weeks, I mean, these are all. I mean, yeah, it's highlighting the new stuff, but I mean, it's all loaded with great old stuff from you guys. I mean, if someone were fully aware of Guided by Voices, the set list is a great place to start.
Well, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, you're right. Just look at any current set list. We came close. We didn't come close to doing albums in succession, but we did a concept similar to that in that we did a 100-song show for New Year's Eve a couple years ago. It was 100 songs for $100 New Year's Eve with Guided by Voices. So it was a 4-hour show.
Oh my God!
And we played a lot of old songs. It was great.
That must have been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's certainly worth $100. Great. I'd like to see somebody else charge only $100 to listen to 100 songs.
Yeah, that was in Los Angeles in 2019.
You guys are coming through our area in September in Holyoke at Ray Street Live at the Gateway City Arts. It's a great room, and it should be a great show. And like I said, I love the new records, Tremblers and Goggles by Rank and Crystal Nuns Cathedral. Both really good records that you guys have done just this year.
Thank you.
Is there any talk about maybe trying to squeeze one more by Christmas?
Well, we have one called La La Land that's due out. I guess not by Christmas, but possibly shortly after that for the new year. But maybe early into the new year too. But it's called La La Land, and we thought Crystal Nuns Cathedral was amazing, and then we were even more pleased with Tremblers and Goggles by Rank, the way that came out. So we've completed La La Land, and now that's the one we're pretty high on. So in a way, we think we keep topping ourselves. And I believe it's true. We're, sort of dedicated to the songs and the album. And we think that's going to be a great one.
It sounds great. I can't wait to hear it. Doug, it's a real pleasure to talk to you, and best of luck with the tour and the records and everything else. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much, Mike. Thanks for calling.
You bet. Thank you.
I called you. All right, thanks. Okay.
And there you go. The name of the new Guided by Voices record is called Tremblers and Goggles by Rank. There's also Crystal Nuns Cathedral. They're both terrific. And La La Land comes out sometime next year. Plus, they're on the road in Holyoke, Massachusetts at Ray Street Live on September 23rd. They are fantastic live. Thanks again. I hope you enjoyed it. You can contact me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to hear what you think, and I hope to have you back on Baxi's Musical Podcast.